Hi there. Today I've created a quick tutorial on generating an animated fly-through star field using AppleMotion. So if you're an AppleMotion user, stay tuned for creating a star field on Apple a Day. Hey, so let's get started. We're going to make a blank motion project, just 1080p, 1 minute long. And I guess I should explain that the star field we're about to create is actually going to be a particle generator, where the particles are flying towards the camera in 3D. So every particle generator needs a base particle. So we're going to make a circle as the root or base particle for this particle generator. Just draw a circle. If you hold down the Shift key to constrain it to a perfect circle, we're just going to draw a tiny little circle in the center of the screen, roughly around that size. I'm going to rename this to star. And I'm actually going to move that to the center of the screen. You can do that by going to the inspector and selecting properties. While the star is selected, you can either type in 0 and 0 for the X and Y, but I'd like to click on the drop-down menu here and hit reset parameter, and that puts it to 0, 0. Now that the star is in the position on the center of the screen, I'm going to convert it to a particle emitter rather, by clicking on Make Particle. And let's change that to Star Field Emitter. And while we're at it, let's change the name of the group to Star Field. So if we were to play this, it basically is just a bunch of circles moving out from the center. Not really what we're looking for a star field. So the one thing we want to do is make it 3D. With the emitter selected, under the inspector emitter properties, we're going to click on the 3D checkbox. And right away, you'll see a slight difference, but really not much of a star field. What we need to do is to force the particles to come towards the camera. We're going to do that by zeroing out the longitude and change the range to say 30 degrees. And that keeps them 30 degrees towards the camera. So they're not going behind the camera away from us. They're all coming towards us. If we hit play now, well, they kind of look like they're coming towards the camera, but it's hard to tell because we've got two issues. The speed is very slow, and the life is only 5 seconds, so they're blinking out before they get a chance to go past the, our field of view. First thing I want to do is adjust the speed, and let's make it 600 with a randomness of 500. You'll have some stars that go really, really fast and some that go really slow. So if we were to play now, well, that's looking a little bit better. They're coming towards us. They're awfully big, though, but we'll make an adjustment for that. The second thing we want to do is adjust that life to make it, say, 15 seconds. So now they'll last long enough to go right off screen before they wink out. And let's adjust the scale. I'm going to lower that scale maybe to 10%. Oh, now they're nice and tiny. And with a scale randomness of 5%. If I were to play that, suddenly it's kind of looking like a star field. Maybe we'll make that randomness a bit higher so we can have some bigger stars. Yeah, and we got some bigger ones. Let's adjust the number of elements on the screen, or the number of particles. The initial number we can make at 100. And I think we want to adjust that birth rate to 200 with maybe a 50 randomness, so it's not constantly 200 coming out every second. Let's see how that plays. This is looking pretty good. It looks like a star field. The issue that we have now is that the stars all seem to be spawning, right from the same center location. In order to make that not so obvious, we want the stars to fade in. So we want to adjust the opacity over life. And we'll start that by clicking on the very first position at 0%, which is the location. I guess I should explain how the opacity over life bar works. It's basically based on the timeline of the emitter. the far left is 0, the far right is 100% of the time. So at the 0% position, which is at the beginning, we're going to change that opacity to 0 so you can't see anything. And then by clicking on the bar, you can add another, like a keyframe, I guess, for the opacity. And we're going to change that location to say, let's make it 20%. At the 20% point within the particle's life, we are going to change that opacity to 100. So what that means is from the time the particle is spawned to this position, 20% of its life. So I guess you could argue that if the life is 15 seconds, 20% of that would be whatever, 3 seconds, I guess. So at the 3-second mark, that's when they would fade in. So let's see how that looks. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I think the issue is that it's fading from the very beginning to the 3-second point. What I think will work better is if the stars are spawned and they're already moving after maybe a second or so, then we fade them in. And in order to do that, we're going to put another opacity marker and we'll set that position to be 10%. So we're halfway between 0 and 20. And we'll also set that to 0 opacity. So what's happening for the first few seconds of the life of the particle, it's going to stay invisible and then it'll fade in. And that might look a little more realistic. Yeah, see, that looks pretty good now. Those stars are flying. It's like you're flying through space. It looks like an old episode of Star Trek. So I think the next thing we want to do is the stars are pretty solid. They're perfect circles. We need to add like a blur to them. If we select that star circle that we created initially, and we go to filters and go to blur and go to Gaussian blur, which is a standard blur, and maybe put that to, I don't know, 30. See how that looks? And you can see the stars. Yeah, see that? They're a little softer looking. They glow a little bit more. Maybe we can make that 40. A little bit even more. Yeah, that looks nice. And if we play that back, that looks pretty good. I think the stars are a little bit too big. So let's make another adjustment there in the emitter. And under scale, we're going to drop that scale by, say, let's go at half. Go 5%, and we'll make the randomness 4%. See, if the randomness is bigger than or equal to 5, it's going to make some of the scale can be 0 or less than 0, which is not what we want. So we never want the scale to hit 0. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's moving a little bit slow because my recording software is probably affecting, the frame rate of how well Motion can play it back. But that does look pretty slick. Yeah, if I turned off the blur, that might be might play faster. So that's without the blur. Obviously, the blur is going to slow things down. But that looks pretty good. Now I think I made the stars too small, though. Let me go back to that scale. Let's make it 7% and 6. Okay, that looks pretty good there. There's your star field. Let's turn the blur back on. Yeah, let me render this and I will play it back, and you can see it play back in normal frame rate. And you can tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Okay, there's your final star field, rendered out and playing back in the movie file. As you can see, it's pretty slick, pretty smooth, looks pretty awesome. Obviously, you can adjust the speed of it. You can add the number of particles. There's so many things you can change to make it perfect the way you would like it. But I'm pretty happy with this. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I'm John Martins, and I'll see you next time on Apple a Day.